Welcome to Whispers by Sai, where stories breathe softly into your dreams. If this story touches your heart, do like, subscribe, and share. Now, close your eyes and let the night begin. Years passed, the Taj shimmered like a pearl. But inside the palace, the king, Shah Jahan, grew darker. He locked his queen in a tower, away from him and the sun. And at night, while he slept, she watched the moon over the Yamuna. Their love turned cold, but not forgotten. In their solitude, they remembered promises of an eternal bond, of stars entwined, woven in moonlight. The queen whispered, "If only there was a place where the moon touched the earth, where our love could rest." The king heard this, or maybe he dreamt it, for he woke to find her gone. Her tower empty, her trace vanished. Now grief tightened his chest, colder than any winter. The servant said, "Look for her by the river. She walks there in the morning mist, calling your name." He stood by the river, its water silent, no sign of his queen. Then he saw footprints leading into the fog. He followed them deeper, to a clearing where trees bowed low. And there she was, her face pale, tracing designs on the wet earth. When she turned, the king stepped back. Her eyes were filled with the river's flow, deep and endless. He asked, "Are you leaving me, my love?" She looked up, her voice soft like the first rain. "No, my king. I only wish to touch the moon, to bring its light closer. Can you not see? We are made of moonlight, and our love story must be written in silver." He felt a pull, a longing he'd never known. The queen reached out, and for a moment, the world shifted. They stood beneath the moon, and the river whispered tales of old. There, in that space between earth and sky, the king and queen forgot their earthly forms. They were just two souls seeking the infinite. But as the sun began its ascent, the magic faded. They were back by the river, and with the dawning light, the weight of their earthly bonds returned. The king felt it in his bones, a deep ache of loss and longing. Holding his queen close, he vowed, "I will build you a palace of silver. Its domes will touch the clouds, and its gardens will hold the moon's embrace forever." The queen smiled, her eyes shining brighter than any jewel. "Then let us begin, my love. Let the river guide your hand, for it knows the secrets of the moon." And so the king turned toward Agra, where the first rays of sunlight kissed the marble peak of the Taj. In his heart, he carried the queen's whisper, in his soul, the memory of her touch. But how can one man carry eternity? As he neared the city, he saw not just the Taj, but another vision, dark and looming across the river. The architect had laid the foundation, but it remained a maze of rough stone and stifled dreams. The king halted, his gaze fixed on the unfinished tower. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. He sent word through the empire, calling artisans from distant lands, those who understood the language of stone. When they arrived, he showed them the blueprints, the plans for a palace unlike any other. It would be a testament to loss, a monument to longing. He called it the Qutb Minar, the Tower of Grief. He chose black marble, harder and darker than any other stone. He wanted a structure that would endure, that will withstand the test of time, for he intended this tower to reach for eternity. Each artisan brought their best, competing with one another to create the most intricate patterns and designs. Each day, the tower grew, reaching for the sky, becoming a canvas of pain. Some said the king was mad, that he'd forgotten his queen. But others understood, for they too had loved and lost. And in the king's madness, they saw their own reflection. Years passed, and the Qutb Minar grew taller than the Taj, its shadow falling across the river. Still, the king wasn't satisfied. He yearned for more, pushing himself and the artisans to their limits. But the marble was cold, unforgiving, and even the strongest stone needs time to rest. Then one night, as the king walked the halls of his palace, he heard music. It drifted from the courtyard, faint yet enchanting. He stepped outside, and there in the moonlight, he saw his daughter dancing. She twirled, and for a moment, the king saw not just a child, but the lost queen. Her spirit returned in their daughter's laughter. Time had healed the wounds, but left the scars. The king realized then that life and love couldn't be contained in marble. They flowed like the river, ever-changing, ever-moving. With dawn, he summoned the architects and artisans. "Stop the work," he ordered. "Let the tower remain unfinished. It is here by the river where our love story belongs." The news spread like wildfire. Those who had toiled for years on the tower felt cheated. Some left, grumbling and angry. Others stayed, intrigued by the king's new vision. The king showed them a plan, not of a tower, but of a garden. He wanted a place of solace, a sanctuary by the river where he and his daughter could walk and remember. So the artisans got to work, shaping the rough stones into elegant benches, fountains, and archways. They wove patterns on the ground, mirroring the stars in the night sky. Soon, the clearing by the river was transformed. It became a place of tranquility, of whispers and flowing water. The king named it the Bog-e-Firdaus, the Garden of Paradise. And in the center, he built a small black marble tomb, a place for his queen to rest. The Bog-e-Firdaus became a part of the Taj complex, a counterpoint of sorrow to the monument of love. Over the years, many wondered about the unfinished tower, the cute Menor, and the strange garden of black marble. Some saw it as a reminder that even the brightest love stories have shades of gray. Others found solace in the bog, for in its quiet depths, they saw not just death, but a different kind of love, a love born out of loss, nurtured by grief and set free by acceptance. As for the king, he spent his last days in the garden, watching the sunset over the Yamuna. He was old, his beard and hair white as snow, his eyes filled with the wisdom of ages. One evening, as the sky blazed with colors, he felt his daughter's hand in his. "Abba," she asked, "why did you build the Bog-e-Firdaus?" The king smiled, his voice raspy with time. "Because, my child, sometimes in remembering our losses, we find a way to love again. And sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about happily ever afters, but about finding peace in the midst of pain." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, the king closed his eyes. Content to have love, years passed like falling petals, soft and slow. The garden remained. The Bog-e-Firdaus grew quieter and more sacred. A place for grief and yet also for gentle healing. The king's daughter, now grown, returned each year on her mother's death day. She wore white like her mother once did, a simple cotton sari that reached her ankles. She moved like mist, silent, soft, graceful. Even her steps were measured, echoing the quiet dignity of the women in the faded portraits lining the palace walls. One evening, as twilight painted the sky gold, she sat by the marble tomb. With her daughter, a child of 7, curious, inquisitive, bubbling with life, she traced the carvings with her fingers. Was Dottie really that brave? She asked, tilting her head. To leave everything, everyone, and walk into the unknown like she did. The woman smiled. Not all bravery is loud, Latika. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it just stays. She gestured to the garden around them, now bathed in the soft glow of dusk. The girl nodded, though her eyes were still full of questions. That night, the garden whispered again, through wind, through water, through memory. One old caretaker remained, a man who once laid stone with the king himself, his wrinkled face a roadmap of time, his eyes pools reflecting years of stories. He remembered the king's voice, weathered and worn, saying, "Build not for pride, build for peace." He remembered the queen, how her laughter echoed in these very gardens, and how even her steps seemed to dance with the rhythm of the fountains. He remembered the king, his broad shoulders slumped with sorrow as he laid the foundation of the tomb. Each stone carefully chosen, each angle precisely measured, a testament not to power, but to enduring love. It was a love story etched in marble and moss, a silent promise whispered across generations. Now, visitors still came. Not many, just a few. Poets seeking solace in the quiet grandeur, widows with hopes to find their own strength in the queen's solitude, mothers searching for wisdom in the marble, dreamers who found solace in the shadows. They didn't come to pray, not to a god, but to the idea of peace. No marble shouted here. No pillar reached for glory. The Bog-e-Firdaus was made of pause, of breath, of letting go. And somehow, within its hushed confines, the soul found space to breathe. In time, legends grew. If you sat still at the queen's tomb, you could hear her sigh in the rustling leaves. Some called it imagination, others healing. One traveler, a painter from far away, came and never left. People said he was mad. The old caretaker only sighed, for he too had once been captivated by this place. He too had stayed longer than intended. The painter roamed the garden, his eyes drinking in the play of shadows and light, the whisper of leaves, the murmur of the fountains. He found colors in the silence that he never saw in the sun. When he painted the garden, he painted not the flowers, but the spaces between them, the shadows and the light. And his paintings, too, whispered. They spoke of quiet strength, of dignified solitude, of a love that transcended even death. The king's daughter aged with grace. Her hair silvered like river mist, her steps a little slower, her smile a little softer. Yet her eyes held the same fire, the same quiet strength that had brought her here all those years ago. On her final visit, she walked alone. No attendants, no family, just her and the fading light. She placed a single black rose at the base of the tomb and whispered, "Thank you, Amma, for teaching me how to carry sorrow without being broken. Thank you for showing me that even in loss there's beauty. Thank you for the Bog-e-Firdaus." Then she sat beneath the oldest tree, the one her mother had planted. She closed her eyes. For a moment, the wind rose gently, carrying the scent of rain and petrichor. Petals danced around her like spirits, and the fountain sang its eternal song. The garden held her, like it had held her father, the king in his grief, and his queen in her timeless slumber. Generations changed. The Taj stood tall, a monument to love, a shrine to loss. Tourists came and left with their selfie sticks and fleeting impressions. But the Bog-e-Firdaus remained, untouched by time, unchanged by crowds. One night, the moon bathed it in silver, and the garden remembered. Not the pain, not the loss, but the love that made it all bearable. The love that whispered not in marble, but in the rustling leaves, not in stone, but in the gentle flow of the fountains, not in prayers, but in memories. Every night the garden whispered its legend to the moon, a legend of quiet dignity, of enduring love, of a garden that became a metaphor for peace. For in the end, isn't that what we all seek? To be understood, to be loved, and to find our own Bog-e-Firdaus, our own haven of peace amidst the chaos of the world. The Bog-e-Firdaus, the garden of paradise, where love turned to stone and whispers echoed through time. It stands as a reminder that sometimes the quietest voices speak the loudest, and the gentlest hearts hold the greatest strength. It's a place where the soul finds solace, where the weary can rest, where the grieving can heal, and where the lovers pledge their eternal devotion. So if you ever find yourself lost in the labyrinth of life, seeking an oasis of tranquility, remember the Bog-e-Firdaus, where the marble whispers tales of love and loss, where the fountain sings songs of solace, and where the trees stand as silent witnesses to the eternal human search for peace. The Bog-e-Firdaus was no longer visited. Trees grew wilder, ivy swallowed stone. The world outside changed. Kings turned to books, palaces to pixels. but the garden remained quiet and waiting. Then one spring evening, a young historian named Ayan arrived in Agra. He wasn't searching for the Taj. He had seen its photos. He wanted what others missed. He'd read whispers in an old Persian journal. Behind the marble lies a garden that mourns in silence. His curiosity burned. That night, the Bag-e-Firdaus welcomed a new visitor. Not a tourist, but a seeker. Ayan followed the riverbanks at dawn, camera in hand, journal in pocket. No tourist guides pointed him there. No signs. Just instinct and silence. And when the mist lifted, there it was, an old iron gate half hidden in vines. Cracked stone paths beneath mossy roots, gnarled trees that gossiped in the breeze. Ayan stepped in, his senses on high alert. The air shifted. The wind grew still, like the garden was holding its breath. He walked past archways covered in creepers, fountains dry but still noble, benches carved like half-moons. Everywhere, nature's patient reclaiming of what was once manicured, a testament to the relentless march of time. And then he saw in the distance a black marble tomb untouched by decay. Ivy wreathed around it, yet did not obscure its grandeur. As he approached, he realized it wasn't just a monument, it was a mystery. He circled it, searching for answers, finding only more questions. Who had been buried here? Who had loved and lost? Who had mourned and moved on? He reached out, his fingers brushing the cold marble. In that moment, he whispered without meaning to, "Who were you?" The garden didn't answer with sound, but with stillness. As he stood there, Ayan felt a profound shift within himself. The tomb offered no epitaph, no inscription, only an enigma that mirrored his own life, a story waiting to be discovered. He sat down beside the tomb, his heart thudding against his ribs. He opened the journal, its fragile pages whispering secrets from the past. He found the entry from that day. The ink faded, but the words clear. When love dies, it is buried not in earth, but in memory. The words struck him deeply, resonating with a truth he couldn't ignore. Love, loss, memory, they were universal, timeless. They echoed within him, stirring emotions he didn't know he possessed. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the garden, Ayan continued reading, each word a brushstroke painting a vivid picture of a love story gone by. He imagined the lovers who once strolled these very paths, their laughter echoing in the fountains, their initials carved into the ancient trees. He saw them in the crumbling arches, heard them in the rustling leaves. Their love story became his, their pain, their joy, their despair. The garden, once a place of solace for the grieving, became a sanctuary for him, a refuge from the noise of the world. Here, amidst the ruins, he found a different kind of history, one that touched his soul. The Bag-e-Firdaus, with its silent stones and whispering trees, became more than just a historical site for Ayan. It became a mirror reflecting the complexities of life, love, and loss. He spent the entire day there, lost in the labyrinth of emotions the garden evoked. The air grew heavy with unspoken words, the trees laden with untold stories. As the afternoon wore on, Ayan felt a connection to the past, a sense of continuity that transcended time. The garden, he realized, was a living entity, breathing stories into existence. It had witnessed joy and sorrow, love and longing, and now it was sharing its secrets with him. The sky turned the color of old parchment, and Ayan knew it was time to leave. But before he went, he did something impulsive. He pulled out his phone, its sleek surface a stark contrast to the ancient surroundings. He took one photo, the tomb framed in the gathering shadows, vines creeping up the marble. It was a simple picture, devoid of any embellishment. Yet it held within it the essence of what he had experienced. The tomb, the garden, the story. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, Ayan posted the photo online. He didn't add a caption or tags, just a single line that encapsulated his experience. found something sacred, no filters needed. And with that, he turned off his phone, leaving the digital world behind. That night, as the moon bathed the garden in silvery light, the bog-y Firdaus came alive with whispers. The wind rustled through the leaves, carrying tales of love and loss. The shadows danced on the tomb, creating fleeting images that teased the eye. The stillness was broken only by the distant call of a night bird, a lonely serenade to the sleeping world. Meanwhile, online, Ayan's photo began making the rounds. It sparked a flurry of comments, each person seeing something different in the image. Some saw love, others mystery. But all of them were drawn to the simplicity of it, the rawness that resonated with their own experiences. Artists saw inspiration, writers, a plot twist, and dreamers, a portal to another time. The next morning, the bog-y Firdaus was a hive of activity. People arrived clutching Ayan's photo, their faces a mix of excitement and disbelief. They searched for the hidden tomb, eager to experience what it had to offer. But Ayan wasn't there to guide them, to explain the magic that had unfolded for him. He had returned with his notebook, ready to delve deeper into the garden's mysteries. This time, he noticed small engravings on the marble tomb, barely visible beneath the grime and moss. Carefully, he traced the Urdu script, his heart pounding with anticipation. The words formed a heartbreaking tale of unrequited love, a story of longing and loss that mirrored the garden's own neglect and decay. As he stood there deciphering the words, a chill danced up his spine. He finally understood. This was not just a tomb, it was a legacy, and he was merely its latest custodian. The garden, once a place of solace for the grieving, had become a sanctuary for him, a refuge from the noise of the world. Here, amidst the ruins, he found a different kind of history, one that touched his soul. The bog-y Firdaus, with its silent stones and whispering trees, became a mirror reflecting the complexities of life, love, and loss. He spent the day exploring, documenting, letting the garden stories wash over him. He recorded every detail, every whisper of the wind through the leaves, every creak of the aging marble. He listened to the birds, watched the shadows lengthen, and felt the cool breeze on his skin. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the garden, he sat beside the tomb again. This time, he brought more than his camera and notebook. He brought an offering, a single white rose to lay upon the cold marble. He didn't know whose spirit rested beneath it, but he knew that this place held more than just history. It held emotion. He placed the rose carefully, its petals unfurling like a whispered secret, and in that moment, he understood. The bog-y Firdaus was not just a garden, it was a testament to the enduring power of love and memory. It was a place where the boundaries between past and present blurred, where the whispers of history mingled with the rustle of leaves, and where the soul of a forgotten love story still lingered. And so he stayed, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, listening to the evening breeze weave tales of love and loss. As darkness fell and the stars began to twinkle above him, he left the garden, carrying with him the weight of its stories. That night, he returned home, his mind racing, his heart heavy. Sleep eluded him as he relived the day's experiences. The garden's secrets kept him company, its whispers echoing in his ears. When dawn broke, he was already awake, his thoughts coalescing around a single purpose. He would return to the bog-y Firdaus, not just as a tourist guide, not just as a historian, but as a storyteller. He would share the garden's tales, breathing life into the forgotten love story. He would make sure that this place, this testament to love and memory, did not fade into obscurity. And so it was that the bog-y Firdaus found new life, not in grand renovations or bustling crowds, but in the quiet reverence of one man's dedication. And as the seasons turned and years passed, the garden and Ayan stood side by side, sharing the stories that bound them, forever entwined in a tale of love, loss, and the enduring power of memory. The Taj Mahal, its white marble gleams against the sunrise, a teardrop on the cheek of eternity. But have you heard its other tale? Not of love or loss, but of a secret garden tended by ghosts. This is that story. In Agra, where history sighs through ancient stones, lives a man named Ayan. He is the caretaker of a garden, a place whispered to be the forgotten twin of the Taj. They called it the Bog-e-Firdaus, the Garden of Paradise. But paradise, it seems, was lost to time and Thales. All that remained were crumbling arches and overgrown weeds where roses once bloomed. One night, Ayan couldn't sleep. The tomb's silence echoed louder than noise. Something in the garden had shifted, not outside, but inside him. Ever since he'd been assigned to this post, he'd felt a strange pull, a mystery waiting to be unearthed. And that night, lying in the darkness of his hut, he knew he wouldn't rest until he followed that feeling. The next morning, he brought gloves, brushes, and patience. Armed with nothing else, he set out into the garden. He knelt before the tomb and started brushing away decades of dust from its base. Time had been kind to the structure itself, but the wall beside it was covered in creeping vines and fallen earth. Carefully, he cleared the debris, revealing faded paint and intricate carvings. As he worked, he hummed a tuneless song, his voice blending with the chirping of unseen birds. Then his fingers, calloused and rough from years of labor, brushed against something hard. He paused, listening intently. No wind stirred the air. Yet when he touched the spot again, the small stone beneath his glove moved. A loose tile lay nestled in the smallest corner, as if hiding from the world. With trembling hands, he lifted it, revealing a hollow space beneath. His heart hammered in his chest, echoing the centuries-old thump of discovery. Slowly, he reached inside and pulled out what lay hidden there. It was a box wrapped in silk, untouched by time, tied with a faded ribbon. The wood was cool beneath his fingertips, smooth despite the passage of ages. As he unwrapped the silk, he found a scroll. It wasn't a map, a treasure, or a plea. It was a letter. The paper was brittle, yet whole. The ink had faded, but the words were alive. With shaking hands, he unrolled it, trying to make sense of the elegant Persian script. It was written in flowing curves, each stroke telling a story without words. And as he deciphered the faded ink, a gasp escaped his lips. It began with a greeting, a salutation that echoed across time, to the one who finds this. Then came words that spun a tale of longing and legacy. Let it be known I never wished for marble. I wished only for memory, and a daughter who would carry my silence with dignity. Each word struck him like a revelation. Who was this woman who spoke so candidly to an uncertain future? Her words painted a picture of resilience, of a spirit that transcended physical bounds. She spoke of memory and silence, of a bond that defied even death, but there was more. At the bottom of the letter, she signed off with a simple name, Zainab. And with that name, 1,000 questions echoed in Ayan's mind. Who was she? Why was she here? And how did her story intertwine with this forgotten corner of history? As he read the letter again, another detail caught his eye. He reread the line, a daughter who would carry my silence with dignity. Suddenly, it clicked. The garden, the tomb, they weren't just random structures. They were part of a story he'd almost let fade into oblivion. He looked at the garden with new eyes. Every flower, every tree held a secret. The whispering wind carried echoes of the past. And in that moment, he realized he wasn't just a caretaker, he was a keeper of memories. He stood, his bones humming with purpose. In his heart, he made a silent vow to unearth the truth behind these whispers. To do that, he needed more than intuition. He needed evidence, something tangible to bring Zainab's story to light. His gaze fell back to the garden. He began to explore, noticing patterns in the foliage, shapes in the shadows. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing day, he uncovered more of the garden's secrets. He found more letters, each one a piece of the puzzle, each one deepening the mystery. Some spoke of love, others of loss, all of them hinting at a grander narrative. Then he discovered something extraordinary. Hidden beneath a jasmine bush, he found a collection of sketches, drawings that depicted not just the garden, but a structure that mirrored it. It was the exact replica of the tomb he'd cleaned, except this drawing showed vibrant colors, lush vegetation, and life. More importantly, it had a name inscribed on it, a name that sent shivers down Ayan's spine. Zainbi, each discovery fueled his determination. He learned of a love story, of a bond that defied societal norms, of a forbidden romance between the royal couple who commissioned the Taj and their gardener, Zainab. But he also uncovered a tragic ending of how Zainab, the woman who loved poetry, flowers, and the stars, had been forgotten in the annals of history. With the pieces of the puzzle falling into place, Ayan realized he wasn't just uncovering history, he was breathing life back into it. The garden, once neglected, was blooming again, and in tending to it, he was honoring Zainab. That evening, Ayan didn't post online about his finds. Instead, he sat in the garden, his back against the cool marble of the tomb. He pulled out the letter again, tracing the fading ink with his finger. This tomb was never meant for mourning. It was meant for peace. Let no statue rise from me. Let the flowers bloom instead. He looked around him at the vibrant blooms, the sweet fragrance mingling with the evening breeze. He stayed there for hours, letting the story soak into his soul, becoming one with the whispers of the past. Then, as darkness fell, he heard it again, a faint humming. It seemed to come from deeper within the garden. Curiosity piqued. He stood up, following the melody like a moth to a flame. The path led him to an old marble bench shaped like a crescent, and there, carved into the backrest, more words. He built a tower for me. I gave him a garden. As he traced the inscription, he smiled through a tear. It all made sense now. This place was never about death, but about love, remembrance, and eternal devotion. It was a conversation between two souls, one in marble, the other in blooming flowers. He closed his eyes, picturing Zainab sitting on this very bench, her laughter echoing through the garden. He could almost feel her presence, her spirit lingering in the rustling leaves. When he finally opened his eyes, the moon hung like a silver coin in the velvet sky. The garden glowed under its soft, gentle light. The flowers seemed to shimmer, and the shadows danced with an ethereal glow. It was as if the garden itself was coming alive, sharing its secrets with the night. Suddenly, the humming grew louder. Startled, Ayan turned around, but there was nothing there. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Then he realized it wasn't a sound at all. It was the wind, or maybe it was the garden sighing contentedly. That night, Ayan didn't return to his hut. Instead, he lay down on the cool grass, staring up at the star-studded sky. He thought of Zainab, her spirit, her story, her garden. He realized he hadn't just stumbled upon a forgotten tomb. He'd become a part of its legacy. As the first rays of sunlight touched the horizon, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold, Ayan made a vow. He would not sell this story to the world, not for fame or fortune. He would keep it, cherish it, and share it with those who truly appreciated its magic. For in the forgotten corners of history lie some of the most beautiful stories waiting to be discovered. And in the whispering breeze of the bog at Firdaus, Zainbi's spirit lived on, not loud, not proud, just present. Days turned to weeks, and Ayan kept returning to the garden. Each time it felt different, like the earth itself remembered him. The scent of rain on wet soil, the feel of damp earth under his fingertips, the taste of pomegranate juice staining his tongue. It felt as though the garden welcomed him back each time, enveloping him in its embrace. He stopped bringing cameras, He stopped writing posts. The garden had become a part of him, or maybe he had become part of it. One afternoon, as golden light filtered through the trees, Ayan found something strange. Half buried near the bench where he sat with Zainab, a small stone slab had appeared. It was smooth, worn by years of weather and touch, and yet something about it was new. He brushed the dust off carefully and traced the grooves in the stone. A single line was etched into it. When grief is too heavy for the heart, the earth will carry it. He sat beside it for hours, eyes closed, listening. Birds called in the distance. Leaves rustled like whispers, but then something new. A voice, faint, almost part of the wind. A woman's voice, soft, low, steady. He opened his eyes, startled. No one was there, but the voice lingered, echoing around him. Had he imagined it? Was it the wind playing tricks? Or was someone here with him in the garden? That night, he dreamt. He was in the garden again, but it was different, brighter, livelier. Flowers bloomed in impossible colors, bending their heads to share their perfume. Water danced in the fountains, sparkling diamonds in the sun, and on the marble bench sat a woman. Her face was calm, her eyes ancient. She wore white, not as morning, but as moonlight. "You came," she said. Her voice was the rustle of leaves, the murmur of a stream. Ayan couldn't speak. He only nodded, afraid to break the spell. "Tell the story," she whispered. "But not as marble, not as war. Tell it as river, as garden, as silence." He woke with tears on his cheeks. He didn't know if it had been a dream or a memory not his own, but he understood now. This place wasn't just for remembering. It was for healing. The garden was a sanctuary, a refuge for the soul. And Zainab, her spirit lingered here, offering solace to those who sought it. That morning, he returned to the garden and placed a note beneath the crescent bench. "I hear you," he wrote. "I'm listening." As he turned to leave, he noticed a little girl standing at the entrance. Her big eyes were curious, her face innocent. Behind her, a woman followed, her mother. "Is this a museum?" The girl asked, her voice echoing in the stillness. Ayan knelt, smiling. "No," he said, "it's a story that listens back." The mother smiled, uncertain, but the girl ran in, touching the vines, laughing softly. For a moment, he saw something shimmer, like the past welcoming the future. That evening, for the first time, he told the story, not to the world, but to the child. Slowly, softly, like the wind in the garden. And the child listened, eyes wide, heart open. The garden had found a new listener, and Zainab's voice, it continued to echo. Now, every day, people came to the garden. They sat on the benches, shared stories, laughed, cried. Families picnicked on the lawns. Lovers strolled hand in hand. The garden was alive with their presence. Anya sat in a corner, watching, a faint smile on his lips. He didn't have to tell the story anymore. It was out in the open, carried on the wind, whispered among the flowers. The marble statues seemed to come alive. Their silent witness turned to empathy. Even the war-torn walls had a story to tell now, not of destruction, but of resilience, of life blooming through the cracks of stone. One day, a young man approached him, his eyes filled with admiration. "How did you do it?" he asked. "How did you turn this place into a garden?" Ayan looked at him, puzzled. "I didn't," he said. "I found it like this." The young man shook his head, still confused. Ayan rose, his joints aching from sitting too long. "Come with me," he said, leading the way through the maze of paths. They stopped by the old well, its bucket hanging patiently. "This is where I started," he said, gesturing to the parched earth. "But the seeds were already here. All I did was water them." The young man pondered this, his gaze drifting to the vibrant blooms all around them. "And the pain?" he asked softly. "How did you make it bloom here?" Ayan turned, meeting the young man's eyes. "The pain," he said, "is the soil. From it, we learn to tend to the earth." From it, we discover the strength to nurture life, and from it, we find the stories worth telling. The young man nodded slowly, understanding dawning on his face. He looked back at the garden, no longer just a tourist attraction, but a living testament to resilience and rebirth. "Thank you," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the garden, Ayan made his way home. The familiar path was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, fireflies dancing around him like fallen stars. The air was filled with the scent of jasmine and night-blooming cereus. The quiet hum of crickets accompanied him, their song a soothing lullaby. Reaching his doorstep, he paused, turning to steal one last glance at the garden. In the distance, the faint sound of laughter reached him, mingling with the gentle rustling of leaves. It was a melody of joy and remembrance, of lives touched by love and loss. Gazing at the kaleidoscope of colors, the vibrant hues of the flowers seemed to deepen in the gathering darkness. It was a sight that soothed his weary soul, reminding him of the beauty that blossomed even in the face of adversity. Stepping inside his home, he shut his shoes at the threshold, a habit he'd held onto since childhood. The interior was dimly lit, the furniture shrouded in the comforting darkness of night. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant sounds of the city. Yet it wasn't an oppressive quiet, but a peaceful hush that enveloped him like a warm blanket. In the solitude of his living room, surrounded by memories both joyous and melancholic, he felt a sense of calm settle over him. It was a feeling he hadn't known could exist after everything he'd endured, the loss, the struggle, the longing. Here, in the quiet sanctuary of his home, he found solace. He made his way to the kitchen, drawn by the aroma of spices, his mother's comforting presence wafting through the air. The familiar sight of her kneeling beside the stove brought a smile to his lips. In her gentle humming, he heard the echoes of his childhood, a melody that spoke of unconditional love and unwavering strength. As he embraced her, inhaling her familiar scent, he realized that home wasn't just about four walls and a roof. It was about the warmth of human connection, the solace found in shared silence, and the healing touch of family. The garden may have been his sanctuary during the darkest times, but it was here in the embrace of his family that he truly found his way back to life.